Good morning. As you're probably aware, this room is famous for its acoustics. If I was playing a violin, I would undoubtedly be able to use those acoustics, but I'm not. I'm just going to be talking to you very briefly. It's the start of a very, very full agenda. Most of us here in this room make our living, one way or another, by buying, selling, or using media in some way. But everyone in this room is a consumer. We all buy stuff, goods and services, food and fast food, cars and coffee. And for hundreds of years, if I can make this work, always best being first up, for hundreds of years, the way we actually bought that stuff was broadly the same. We went to shops. Shops were convenient. We didn't want to traipse around to farms and factories individually to buy from each one. We wanted a selection of stuff brought towards us on our local high street store. So retail was all about aggregation, about bringing things together. The shop created a collection to save us time, and it brought what we wanted into that one place. Now, the original retailers were getting going in the 1500s about the same time as the original mass media. And the original mass media were the traveling theatres, the commedia dell'arte. Now, for fairly obvious reasons, they didn't have any technology to sell tickets. So what they did is they collected people together to watch a show, and then they sold them things, nuts and beer and biscuits and baubles. And so they also aggregated an audience. They brought that audience together, and they monetized it. Now, when the first printed media came along a bit later, the newspapers and magazines, they also aggregated an audience. And what they did was they sold the chance to show those readers a commercial message. They sold ad space through aggregation. Now, this is the first known printed advertisement from 1650. It's selling what was then a revolutionary new drink called coffee. They make a lot of claims for it, including the fact that it cures scurvy and gout. For hundreds of years, this was basically the advertising model. Media created an audience. They sold access to that audience. But as we're all aware, this model is now facing radical change. And over the next couple of days, we will, as they say, wake up and smell the coffee ourselves as we think about whether or not the whole future of the media industry is in some way threatened. Let me share with you some facts which are well known, but they're impressive when you put them all on one slide. Across the world, there are now some 2 billion people connected to the internet. They do that in various ways. There are some 1.6 billion connected computers. By the end of this year, there'll be 1.5 billion smartphones and 250 million tablets. So increasingly, shoppers are not watching or reading ads for their information. They're now actually able to go, in a sense, direct. Online retail is a bit like visiting all those farms and factories, but without ever actually having to leave your sofa. And of course, that means bad news for many retailers. Those store chains who sell things like cameras and music and books or rent videos, unable to compete with the price and convenience of online, they're now all going under by the dozens. And here is another aspect of the nightmare. Someone in a shop not buying anything. The smartphone has now bought us showrooming. Browse in store, buy online. And 55% of US smartphone users last year said that they used the device in a store to research a product or purchase that they made somewhere else. So with peer group ratings, recommendation engines, price comparison sites and all that, consumers feel they have all the information that they need. But the challenge of all this change, of course, isn't just for the retail industry, it's for the media industry as well, who needs advertising if consumers can go direct. Many retailers are becoming like media owners to attract an audience to their site. Companies like Net-a-Porter or ASOS or Amazon let us interact with the product. And in many ways, they're rich content media owners which happen to sell stuff. And what happens then to media agencies if the rivers of gold from advertising dry up or at least get diverted? So, the traditional customer journey from awareness to action is now being short-circuited. and the advocacy role of the satisfied, or worse still, the dissatisfied consumer is growing in importance. And the rate of all this change, as you can see from our slide, is somewhat head-spinning. And it was only 10 years ago that newspaper managers were saying that they thought the internet might possibly take away some of their classified advertising, but they were confident that they could maintain market share. Well, we all know how well that strategy went. So now, today and tomorrow, is our chance to get ahead of the game with some of the best minds in media and marketing about to take this stage. We can hear from them what they think as the emphasis is moving from content onto commerce, and what does that mean for all of us. Now, just before I introduce the first session, a couple of housekeeping notes. This is called a conference, but really we'd very much like it to be a bit more than that, a conversation. But a conversation with 750 people is a bit tricky to manage. Of course, technology is there to help us. You can see the Twitter feed up on those two screens there. The hashtag is FOMG13. If you've got any comments, please tweet them. But significantly, more importantly, if there's a question you'd like to ask one of the upcoming speakers you can see in the agenda, tweet it so they know it's coming, and perhaps if you get their attention, they'll address it directly. Moving on to that agenda, again, with such a large number of people, technology is here to help us. There's a really fantastic app being created by Propeller for this conference. You can find it on any of the commercially available app stores. Just go on there and search for Festival of Media. If you want to get onto that app store and you haven't already found it, there is Wi-Fi throughout the room. The top secret password is Montreux, all lowercase. Spelling Montreux is a bit of a challenge for some people, but look at the back end of it. Spell Montreux correctly and the magic of the internet will be yours for nothing. Okay, I'd now like to start the conference proper with the first of our sets of speakers. Now, if you really are looking for a couple of people to blame for all this technological change, who better than our first two speakers who will be on in a minute? Michael Birkin has been at the top of the agency world for a long time, getting on for 30 years, I think. He started out with Interbrand and then was at Diversified Agency Services with Omnicom, but he's now a client. He's the CMO for computer maker, or device maker, a lot more than just PCs, now Acer. And he's going to be joined in a moment by one of the other guys who's at the very center of this. Intel is the company that you could argue really drove the Silicon Revolution. It's inconceivable that all of you don't have a piece of equipment somewhere with an Intel chip on it. And that's Johan Hiervo, who is the Vice President of Intel. But before they come on, what would Festival of Media be without a big video to start? See the video and then introduce our speakers. But let's give them their welcome applause first before the video goes on. So this is for Michael and for Johan.